individually, but because everybody's here now, it seemed a good chance to introduce him and to maybe have some questions and answers, and then make a break for informal chit-chats as we proceed. So I'm Fred Hunt, and a trustee on the island, and Tony Law, their fellow trustee, and higher members. Where's everybody?
Lynn's here.
Lynn Dunley somewhere close by,
Yeah.
and Daniel Siegel and Rudy and Administrator Janet LeBlanc, and Bruce Jolliffe, Regional Director, who couldn't be here today. Have been meeting off and on with Don over the last 3 years, and he said the last time we met that it would be great if the community could be invited and just make this more of a community event, and I'm really pleased you did that. So great pleasure to introduce Diane Lineker, who's Don's assistant, and Don McRae, who's Comox Valley, Hornby, Denman's MLA and Minister of Agriculture, with congratulations on that appointment to the cabinet. So the idea that if you'd like to make some remarks and then just throw it open to question and answers.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you very much for coming in midweek, and I'm sure there was something else you could do today. I don't know if the good weather or the weather we have today is either better for this or not, but I was kind of enjoying the trip over on the little passenger ferry. I must say, though she won't admit it, Diane absolutely hated it. She's from Alberta and doesn't really like the waves so much, but it was a good experience. And I know it's funny, I was talking to people in Victoria yesterday saying I was going over to Hornby Island today, and the number of people, for whatever reason, who know that there was work being done on the ferry slips on both sides, and there was a passenger ferry, was surprising. Everything from the security officer I talked to in the legislature to one of the pages in the building. And I thought, well, you know what, it's obviously a huge inconvenience with some positive benefit in the end. But I'm glad that I was able to take part on it, though I was kind of hoping we'd come last week when the weather was clear and flat, but that's okay. As well, too, I really appreciate now Hira, I gather it goes both ways there, helping organize this, because one of the things as MLA, it's really important that I have a opportunity to hear what's going on, and obviously it's far easier for me to come over to Hornby Island and visit a whole bunch of people than a whole bunch of people from Hornby to come to me in Comox Valley. And the sad reality too is, since I became a minister last March, I am no longer owned by Comox Valley. I used to say I put in maybe 65 or 70% of my time trying to be outside the legislature in the Comox Valley. Well, now once you become a minister, about 75 or 80% of your time is looking after agriculture and government in British Columbia. And no one gives you any of this knowledge before you go into government, so it's a learning curve completely. So I think this is the first weekday I've been in town probably in 3 weeks. And so I told my wife, I got home last night at 9 o'clock from Victoria, and she goes, "What are you doing today?" And I said, "I'm leaving at 9 o'clock in the morning." And she says, "You better get back as soon as you can, because I have a little daughter. I have two daughters actually, Gracie who's 8 and Chloe who's 2. And while Gracie is pretty self-sufficient, when I'm away for 4 days at a time and not doing a single diaper, Chloe, who I think is a brilliant child and far advanced for her age, still has diapers, and I can't really ask my wife to do too much that way. So when I get home, I try to be an elected official in the Comox Valley, but also a full-time dad. So it's a bit of a balance, but it's kind of nice as well, because and please excuse the stereotype, but when you go to the cabinet table, and I'm a high school teacher by trade. I think some of you may know that. I taught at Vanier for 15 years and was born and raised in the Comox Valley, and coming to the island, I think my first visit here was 1974. We had friends who moved down the street in Seal Bay. They moved over here, and we got to go visit them. And it was a lot harder to get here, I think, then. But when you go to the cabinet table, you don't want a cabinet table which is, for lack of stereotyping, full of 65-year-old overweight grumpy men. And I think it's really important that we have a person like myself, and I'm not representative of everybody, but I want to make sure that there is, a person who has some rural perspective, a ferry perspective, and also a person who has a family who's trying to balance, trying a busy job with trying to be a good husband and a good father. And by all means, I don't get it right all the time, and I hear about it, and so I should. But at the same time, there is that diversity in our caucus room, and we do have some 65-year-old overweight gentlemen, and some unbelievably intelligent younger individuals, and experiences from all across the provinces. but it's definitely not a diverse, or sorry, it's not a really stereotypical cabinet, so it's kind of neat. We also have a new premier who I think brings a different light to government. And I'm shocked. It's funny, I'm in cabinet and I took the most unlikely path to get there. I didn't back her in the leadership race, and when she came to the Comox Valley, I told her that both times. But she turns out, the reality is she's an incredibly nice individual, and sometimes I've had experiences where I've seen politicians, they can turn on the charm when they want and they turn it off. Well, I've been stuck on a plane with her for an hour and a half, and the plane wasn't a Learjet with leather seats. It was 1975 Piper something with mold in the windows, and we were bouncing up and down on our flight. And it was kind of disconcerting because she didn't stop smiling or being nice the whole time. And I was grumpy. I wanted to get off the damn plane, and she was quite willing to be there. She is genuinely nice. And the other test that always makes me happy is when my 8-year-old daughter Gracie insists on telling her 3 jokes in an event. And this is the premier of the province who has to talk to everybody. He takes the 5 minutes out to hear the 3 jokes, which are absolutely horrible, and then also tell one back. I think that's a nice thing to see. I wouldn't want her job by any means. It is a huge province with a range of issues, just like the Comox Valley is as well. But you know what? We don't get smarter as politicians thinking we know everything. We get better because we listen. And sometimes we listen and don't respond accordingly, and that's one of the tough parts of the job. But if you're not listening, you're not doing your job. So I wanted to come today, and at first I thought it best if there is a reason for a Q&A time, so you have the opportunity to not ask me the same question 5 times. You might be able to answer it once and then use the time as best possible. And then a little bit later, we can celebrate by having, looks like cider and snacks and some water over there. And I think there's tea as well. Is there not tea? So thank you very much for working on the snacks as well. So, without further ado, instead of me prattling on, I would like you guys to use the time as best you see fit. And by all means, my skin is a lot thicker than it used to be, so don't be afraid to be critical. I might cry on the inside, but on the outside, I'll try to be tough. So, are there any questions or concerns or comments?
King.
Hi. My name is King Emerson. I'm a visual artist. I've been here on Hornby for a while. And basically, I've spent my life not being interested in politics. However, very recently, I've come up with 2 interesting questions about BC Hydro. Are you familiar with the BC Public Interest Advocacy Centre in Vancouver? It's a group of lawyers that advocate for poverty groups, for seniors, and they take on a lot of issues, including hydro rate increases, this sort of thing. Jim Quayle is the executive director there. On the BC PIAC website, he has a blog called Dumb Meters. And the gist of his comments are that BC Hydro is spending millions and millions and millions, maybe even billions of dollars installing these meters all over the province, when perhaps the money could be better spent other ways to save money and conserve energy and that sort of thing. So that's the first part, my first comment on hydro, which I'm hoping you'll comment on BC Hydro. The second one is that today in the email news, the Auditor General has come up with saying that BC Hydro is taking millions and millions and millions of dollars and sort of forwarding it into the future somehow. They're spending way more money than what they have coming in, so technically they're in debt, but they take this money that they owe and they're putting it into the future, and then they're turning around and saying, aren't we a great group, we're making a profit. Mm-hmm. So there's some creative financing going on that I don't understand. So I guess what I'm kind of wondering is, who are these guys that are running this outfit? Are they the 65-year-old fat guys you're talking about with no brains? Okay, I don't want to slag anybody here, but I am curious as to the logic that seems to be in that corporation and why they would treat their finances that way.
Yeah. I'm not an expert, and I saw the Auditor General come up with a report, and I'm glad we have an Auditor General for that very reason, whether it is in regards to BC Hydro, or whether it is in regards to an issue that's one I have to deal with, the Agricultural Land Commission. You know, and that's part of the elements. I'm not an accountant, and I haven't seen the details, and even if I did, with a very short stroke of looking at it, I may not be wise enough to tell you the accountancy element of it there. The reality is, though, the Auditor General flags an issue, and government responds to it, as does BC Hydro. And if there is a disagreement of opinion, like one of the things we have is gap in general accounting principles, which we as a government subscribe to. And accountancy, which I'm not an expert in by any means, is not always as black and white as I think it should be. But the good thing is, it's been flagged. It's been flagged both politically and economically, and now it has to be accounted for. The minister, Rich Coleman, stood up in the House and answered a question on it yesterday. But chances are he needs to be briefed on it as well. So it's not an issue that's a one-dayer. This is something that will be addressed, I think, over time. The smart meters, there is concern out in the public. There's no doubt about it. I'm still a little confused as to why there's concern about BC Hydro doing it when places like Village of Cumberland are doing it with their water meters and having the electronic reader and doing the same thing. Gas meters across the province are doing the same way. I think there's something like 18 municipalities are doing similar technology, and it was never flagged there. The reality is, I would say in British Columbia, we're very fortunate to have BC Hydro. And the lower rates that come with it. We have, I think, arguably the fourth lowest rate of hydro in North America, which leads us to one of the lowest rates in the developed world. But the reality is, power is going to go up in price in a general commodity sense. The population grows.
Yeah, but is it going to go up because they're not making a profit and they're spending way more than they're taking in? I mean, the financial wisdom just doesn't seem to be there.
Well, one of the arguments, and I know the opposition will give a different number than this, but Hydro will say that right now there's about $100 million in hydro theft a year. We can discover hydro theft right now because we can drive around, and it happens in the city of Courtenay with a thermal imaging camera, and when someone is having a marijuana grow show and using an obscene amount of power, that can be determined. A smart meter, and part of the money is for the meters on our house. Remember, the meters on our house, and I'm not an engineer, but they haven't changed in my whole lifetime. I'm 41 years old. There are very few pieces of technology in a home that haven't changed in 41 years, and the meter we have in our house is one of them. The other part of the dollars is for the smart grid. And there's some things I do like about it. The idea to be able to actually have less of a carbon footprint by actually selling down the road, the smart meter will allow people to have solar panels on their homes in certain parts of the country and the province. Myself in Comox Valley in the summertime could, in theory, though I think it's rather expensive now, put solar panels on my roof of my house and sell back into the grid during the summer to have an energy credit for the winter time, which would save me money and would help us not buy power from other jurisdictions. Because right now our dam system is basically a big old battery, right? We fill it up in the wet season and we sell it out when we need to in the other parts. And we're so fortunate in Comox Valley, British Columbia, because we actually are at the end of the power day. And so we have that ability to actually buy cheap power when it's available on the market. And that's one of the reasons we have such low rates. Could BC Hydro have done a better job? Oh, for sure, selling the smart meter concept. But I'd also argue we could have done a better job selling the HST as government too. They haven't been always so successful in communication. The concerns that are raised, I don't know. I know I was talking to some of the members of HERA earlier, and they were concerned about people having individuals coming onto our property to put on the meters, but they come onto our property now as well to check our meter as well every couple of months. So there is an aspect there. The other thing is, I think there is a conservation needs knowledge, and it's so hard to get knowledge from your current meter that you have for hydro in your house. And so the ability through the internet, I think it'll be by 2013, that you can go online and see your power usage on a daily basis is huge. And so the example I used is you shut down power in your house, or you have your house what you think is black, and you can see your meter still running, and it's running substantially. What's causing that? Well, you can figure that out with a smart meter. You can find out whether it's that 1955 fridge in the basement, maybe it's an expensive TV, or maybe you have a space heater hooked up in a room that you don't think about, and it's just sucking power that way. Or what we call, arguably in the world of politics, the vampire power, when we have all these plug-ins all over our house for a cell phone or a TV that's off, and all these little red lights that are sucking power on a regular basis. And what's that costing us? But conservation is, in my opinion anyway, something that's so essential. And I think the smart meter is a tool that will get us there. Is it the best tool? I don't know, but maybe there's other ways to get there.
Thanks for that, Don. I know that smart meters we could discuss more of, And I should, before carrying on to the next question, note that Richard is here instead and is filming, and just so people know that, and are okay with that, hopefully.
I would have my hair bit.
Your hair is lovely, Don.
Yeah, well, before I went in the cabinet, I used gel. Now that I'm in the cabinet, I don't need to. It just stays up naturally.
Raina.
Well, I've got tons of questions and comments, but I think I'll start with the big coal mine issue and just say, I'm wondering how you're going to protect the Comox Valley and, our tourism-based industry and our shellfish-based industry and our agriculture
Yep.
from the effects of that potential coal mine and how you plan to make sure that it doesn't happen.
Well, the reality is, I don't have a lot of say at this stage, right? We're very early on in the process. I have no more say than you do. And so what happens is there is a process about how we have environmental approval or assessment. And I think the process has been around now for about 16 years, is pretty good. It is really tough to get a project like a mine through from beginning stage to approval. And then the ones that are approved, they often have on the certificate of approval conditions attached to it, which make the mine, it's not mines in particular in this case, they have to meet these tests before they go forward. And that's why, there's only been really one new mine open up in the last 10 years in British Columbia, and that was the one in Princeton, which is really a reopen of an old mine. It was around and shut down in the 1990s. Prosperity Mine in the Caribou-Chilcotin took 17 years from the time it started to the time it was denied by the province, and then it was overridden by cabinet, because the argument, and this is the only time that's happened, and the argument was in Chilcotin that economically the region was so depressed and needed investment in jobs so badly, this would be the benefit. Well, I said earlier to the group I was speaking with, Comox Valley doesn't need that. We don't need, we can always use more jobs, there's no doubt about it. But is it the difference between making the Comox Valley a viable place or not? And the answer is no. The test that they have to reach is huge. Unbelievable. And I'm really pleased to see that 3,000 people broke the record to make it the most submissions on an environmental assessment process. I'm also pleased to see that the government demanded more of this proponent than they've ever asked anybody before. One of the pieces they have to do is, not only do they have to respond to the 3,000 comments, but also too, there's a period again of, I can't remember, 3 months I think, where people have to get to respond on their responses. The end of the day is, and I've said this publicly in the legislature, and I'll say it here, is the Bain Sound shellfish industry is something that is sustainable and will last 100 plus years, no problem, if we look after it. There's no way that mine should be able to go forward unless it can meet the test that says it will not harm it. How they're going to do that, I don't know. I really don't. But right now, we're pulling $24 to $28 million worth of sustainable aquaculture out of Bain Sound every year, and it will always go that way. At the same time, we also have the coal hills in Union Bay, which are leaching coal problems from 1920s through 1960s as well. We haven't solved that one yet. I'm glad we have a process where a guy or a company can come forward and say, I got an idea. I'm going to make an investment. He spent, I think he's told me in the past, $15 million in the Comox Valley working on this project. Well, that's jobs anyway. He knows there is a tough test to reach. But he knew that the bar wasn't going to be changing substantially, and he made that. Is it a risk? By all means. Whether he gets there in the end, I don't know. And will it be, I'm MLA? Well, based on past practice, there'll probably be 4 elections before the final decision. I don't know that for sure. It could speed up along the way. But when the Premier talked about there's 8 mines that they're looking for, seeing expansion in British Columbia in terms of getting approval or not quickly, we're not even close to that group. The mines she was talking about, for the most part, were in the northwest corner of BC, the southeast corner of BC. But this process is so, even though people are tired from the amount of work they put into it, in terms of people like yourself, it's so early on in the process. I think we still have a long way to go, and there's still many, many, many questions that need to be addressed. And for some people, they will never be satisfied. But don't count on it. Don't count on me playing political interference to make a mine happen.
We've got Dan, Bob, and Richard. Dan?
Hi, I'm Dan Johnson, and I appreciate you coming over here in the storm, and congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
My question is, and I see it a direction that's going with the BC ferries. My question is regarding involvement in the BC Ferry Corporation. So far, we see that the ferries have been separated into a private corporation. And I see the danger that's happening on Hornby Island, a major danger, is the fact that they're trying to look at the Gulf Islands as a user pay. Now, as far as I know, when I was working for BC Ferries, that was back in the 60s, that was the so-called government in the day did not take that approach. They took the approach that the ferries, the major ferries would pay for themselves, but the Gulf Islands would never pay for themselves, and they never did. Now, the direction that's being taken now is one that is scary, because they want to make us pay, and if they do that, it's already having an effect on the economy here. It is already affecting the raise in the ferry rates. My question is the government going to stand back and let this process continue without any political involvement? I know they said that they were going to give BC Ferries free rein to do what they wanted, but I logically cannot see that being a right course of action in the case of the Gulf Islands, particularly all of us. So my question is, with the government, is there some things happening in that direction? Because I think that there's some bad planning and some bad direction in this way from BC Ferries.
Well, I don't think we want to have BC Ferries always have a free rein, and where it comes back and bites us. Prime example, politically though, it's a small thing to some degree, but politically it's huge. Is like the salary that David Hahn gets paid, right? You know, the number of times people hear that is unbelievable, and that's a little frustrating. And I don't blame people for being upset by that. $1 million is a lot of cash. Now, to be honest, I think BC Ferries in some ways is well run, but does it need to pay $1 million to get there? I would argue probably not. I also get surprised when I watch Canucks hockey game on TV and I see BC Ferries advertising in GM Place. I'm wondering, why? If you're going to the islands, you're not going, I'm just going to walk and talk this modern. I don't know why we spend those kind of dollars. The other thing I complain about with my colleagues is I like the idea of them promoting BC Ferries, and you'll often see it be BlackRock in the Aculet or the Empress in Victoria, and then these package deals, which are great for tourists. But for example, my family to go back and forth to Vancouver is $200 bill, right? That's a lot of money. And if I lived in Port Moody, and I'm planning my holiday, where am I going? Well, I could go to the Okanagan and be $200 in the pocket and have a straight drive and be there in 3-4 hours, or but the ferries are a great experience. I think we need to market them as an experience for those kind of traveler. The other thing that we mentioned earlier, again, I've been my whole life in the valley. When it was $36 or $48 for a family of 4 to come over to the Hornby for the day, I came. Now there's a couple of reasons. I've been a little busier lately, so I don't come as often as I would like, but I think it's about $80 for my family to go to Hornby and back in a day.
100.
Is it 100 now? And so with, my daughter's 2, she's probably free. But the reality is, for your literally 4 hours in the summertime, maybe 5 hours if you leave really early in the morning, is that a good return? And people aren't coming. And BC Ferries came out the other day and said, well, tourists are down. And that's part of the reason we're losing money. Well, I think there's also a price point. And at the same time, though, my other colleagues would argue, well, $150 million is being put into BC Ferries a year from provincial coffers. The feds, I think, put in, top of my head, 23 or 27, but maybe someone in the room knows better on that. So there is substantial subsidy. The northern runs get subsidized far more than the Gulf Islands do. I've never heard at any political conversation I've been in making the Gulf Island ferries self-sustaining. I haven't heard that conversation.
I've heard it.
Well, you might argue that we're moving in that direction because rates are going up.
No, I've heard it. I've read
But I haven't heard it at the cabinet table.
Yeah, I remember back I forget, was it 73 or I can't remember when Dan Miller was the Minister of Highways, and he definitely came out with that. Now that was a different political, but they definitely tried to do it at that point. They came out and thought, wow, we're going to make it them self-sufficient and pay for their way, which was.
I would argue as MLA for the Comox Valley, that's not realistic. And a prime example is when I took the passenger boat across and had the assistant project manager who happened to be traveling at the same time as we were, because I wasn't sure how much the project was for the 2 ramps, and he said $18.5 million. Well, you know what, you're never recouping those kind of investments. And yet at the same time, I think they were saying that the last time they were put in was 1978 or something like that. I can't remember the year. 72. You would know. You know, we're talking 35 years ago plus. And so, you know, that's a good investment. And then I asked him, how long is this $18.5 million investment going to last? He says, well, 40-year lifespan, but realistically it should last longer with some maintenance. And great. So you want to build good quality product, and they were saying that when we were taking out the pilings, you know, the inside of them were just empty. They were hollow in certain places. But again, I don't think it's realistic. On Hornby Island's winter population, we're pushing 1,200?
1,000.
Well, yeah, that's not gonna happen. Summertime, anyway, as the MLA, I will not be pushing for self-sufficiency. But at the same time, remember, not to pick on my colleagues, I don't care what side of the house they're on, but it's hard to convince a guy from the Kootenays or from Kitwanga that their tax dollars need to go into our ferry system when they know they'll never take it in their lives. Well, then you come back with, well, I'll never drive on your highway either, for God's sake, we need them all. But it's all a balance. And the thing that ticks me off the most in government, since I've been there, in a good way / bad way, is healthcare. You know, it's the elephant in the room that no one wants to mess with, thankfully, but at $17.3 billion, you know, $8 billion more let's not talk politics even. $8 billion more has been put into healthcare in the last 10 years. And I guarantee it's argued not to be enough. $800 million more went into healthcare last year than the year before, and it was portrayed in the media as a cut. We can't keep up, and it is not sustainable. And so what happens is other ministries, mine particularly and others, suffer because of it. And because MRIs and hip surgeries and heart attacks definitely take precedent over many things. Could we spend our healthcare dollars a bit more efficiently? By all means, we need to look at that. But it's a catch-22. I guarantee that the Minister of Health wins most arguments.
Well, you can tell your friends in the Kootenays, we don't mind paying the subsidy, but we don't want to have to pay for the whole shop.
No, I agree. But when it comes to that $150 million, that part of it. But again, don't worry about it. The voices is not just mine at the cabinet table. I just sometimes wish I had some more colleagues who were ferry takers. You know, there's not many of us. There's 4 BC Liberal MLAs in caucus, and you could argue that some of the Vancouver MLAs take the ferries, but not really.
Well, all the MLAs get a free ferry service too.
Only if you're doing work. Only for work.
Bob.